What's up, whole lifers? Welcome to Health Over Everything podcast. I'm your host, SoCal Gula.
And I'm Steven Zee.
Today, we're going to be talking about Steven Z's story. We're going to get into his life, his journey, and everything about him so you guys could have an insight of his whole entire health journey and his life in general. So, you ready to get into it, Steven?
Yes, I am.
All right.
Fire
Well,
away.
all righty. So, your story is pretty interesting, as everybody's individual story is. Let's just start with your mom and dad. Like, where did they meet?
Shoot, I think my dad actually met my mom when he was stationed in Taiwan.
So he was in the army, or in
Yeah.
yeah, he was in the army, and he went to Taiwan, and he's stationed over there, and he met your mother,
Mhm. Yep.
and they fell in love, I guess, and had you.
Yeah, I guess they hit it off and he ended up getting married. And I'm not even sure if they got married out there or if that's something, that he brought her back over here, brought her back. He's an item. Or she came back here with him and then they got married here. I'm not really sure.
So, um, did she? Oh, so you don't know? Like, she did move back to the United States and became a citizen, or just
Yeah.
in marriage? Okay, that's cool. So then they had you. Like, how many years later after they met? Do you know?
That I'm not even sure. I do know that me and my sister were 13 years apart. So at some point, my dad was like, "Yeah, you were kind of an accident. We weren't really trying to have you." And I was like, "Oh, thanks, Dad."
Okay, so they were together for a while then, because
Yeah.
they had your sister first, and they only
Yep.
had two kids, your sister and you. So you're two kids, 13 years apart.
hmm
So that's crazy. And he used to work at AT&T or Verizon or something like that.
Yeah. When the first company was called GTE, and I think Verizon bought them out, so he just stayed with them pretty much.
Okay, so then you were born in 1983, right?
Yep.
What city were you born in?
I was born in Anaheim.
Anaheim. And then for the first few years you lived in Ontario, right?
Yeah. I
Um,
think when I was born, we were living out in Orange County for a little bit, but eventually found the place in Ontario and stayed there for a few years until I moved to Fontana.
okay, so when you lived in Ontario in the beginning, were you living with both your mom and your dad?
Yeah, we were living in like a mobile home.
Oh, okay. And then you moved to Fontana around five or six. Did they
Yeah,
stay
probably
together?
somewhere around there. Yeah, they were still together at that point. My mom had a job like across the street at it was like a food place called Alfredo's,
Oh, okay.
Italian place. And then my dad, he was still working out in Norwalk at GTE.
Oh, okay. And then, so how was your like childhood life? Like, was it stressful? Was it happy? Was it blissful? How was that?
I felt like it was good. I probably feel like I had like a typical upbringing. Like at that point, my mom or dad, they didn't beat me. So, that was good. But I just remember being outside a lot, like, getting home from school, doing homework, and then going outside and just playing with the neighbor kids until it got dark. Like that was pretty much like majority of my childhood. We're probably, like they say, we're like the last generation of the kids who actually played outside, drank water
Yeah,
from the hose, did shit like that, like just playing
yeah.
hide and seek and team ditch 'em and all the other fucking games that we played back in the day.
Okay, so like, did your mom and dad ever did they stay together the whole time? Did they ever get divorced, or what happened with that?
They did split up. They ended up getting a divorce. I was probably about 10 years old, and then it was like a separate custody. So my dad worked nights, so I would spend my mornings, or I'd have to go to school, but then he would watch me till about 5, and then he would go to work. He would drop me off at my mom's and then, go to work. So I was with my mom from like 5 until the morning. So when he got off of work, he'd pick me back up.
Huh. Yeah, just real quick, I didn't meet you till like we're like 15, so this is all new to me. I didn't really know none of this. Um, so how was that like for your mentality, and your how did you cope with that?
Honestly, I feel like I was young. I don't remember it actually bothering me. Maybe I was too young to really understand what was going on. Um, I know when they did split up, they kind of asked me like, well, who do you want to live with? And I
The question.
preferred, I chose my dad for whatever reason.
The
And
question.
yeah, like who do you want to live with? So I
Who do
chose
you
my
love
dad.
more?
But even though it was kind of like a 50-50 agreement, um, and I think they asked me that same question again because my mom at some point ended up moving back to Taiwan.
Oh, she
And
did.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would probably say maybe when I was like 12 or 14,
Oh,
maybe
wow.
somewhere around there. I know she came back to visit a couple of times after she moved out there. But
She had
they, yeah, I
family out
remember
there?
them asking me that again, like, well, do you want to stay here with dad or do you want to move with your mom to move to Taiwan? I'm like, I don't want to go to Taiwan. I'm like, I don't know anyone over there. I don't know the language. I'm like, I'm staying here.
Yeah, that's crazy. So basically, was she like supported by your dad, and that's why she moved, like, had to move back to Taiwan, or was it just there's family out there?
She does have family out there, but she, from my understanding, was running more away from like she had a gambling problem and she owed a lot of money to her friends. So instead of paying them, she chose to kind of run away.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, because I know that because my dad told me that they were coming after him, like, hey, Yaling, or not Yaling, that's my sister. Lena owes us money. Pay up. And he's like, well, that's between you and her. Like, that has nothing to do with me. I wasn't gambling with you. I didn't lose the money. Like, you're like, good, find her. I don't know where she's at, so good luck finding her. But yeah, I'm not paying you.
Okay, so that's around 10 or 12, and then so
Hmm.
then do you know like why they broke up, or do you know like what causes like that? I know that's a lot of stress in people's lives in America, with their mental health and stuff like that. Marriage is not so that's an interesting thing. Like, do you know what was the breaking point or what happened with that?
Well, I'm sure, I mean, they even say about even in today's time, like financial burden and financial hardship is like one of the biggest reasons people fight and get a divorce. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming, my mom spending the money and gambling away like the hard-earned money that they were making, that was probably a problem. My sister told me that my dad did have a little bit of a drinking problem, so I'm sure that didn't help. I'm pretty sure, I'm not gonna blame it all on my mom. I'm sure my dad had some flaws and she had some flaws and they couldn't figure out how to make it work and just decided that, they'd be better off apart.
Crazy. Okay, so now that brings us to the question. Did you what kind of traits, the major traits do you think you got by from each one of your parents? Like, do you know?
Mm,
You always say
like from them personally or like lessons that they taught me?
no, just like traits. Like you say you got drinking from your dad, but you don't gamble. Or do you think that you have like some sort of you have
Uh, that kind of makes me think like I'm pretty chill like my dad. But I do think I have like an addictive personality. Like when I get involved with things, like I'm all in. I get obsessive, so that might be from my mom's side.
Mm,
I could picture that. A lot of I'm pretty chill, like I was saying. Like, you used to call me like, "Oh, Steven, you're freaking all super zen." I think I get that from my dad. My dad was more chill, laid back. My mom was more high strung and yelling and acting like a crazy woman.
oh, crazy. So that brings us to 15. You started like getting into so the health wise, like you were skating a lot, right? Like you didn't play
Yeah.
any other sports when you were growing up?
I did play baseball in middle school for a
Oh, you
little
did.
bit. I think I played for maybe 4 years, and then once I got into high
Oh, four
school,
years.
it was probably like I think I started skating in eighth grade. So eighth grade, I think I started skating too because of my cousin Jeff. I went to hung out with him one summer. Him and his buddy had a skateboard, so of course when I came back home, I told my dad I wanted a skateboard, and then I just kind of fell in love with it. Like I said, that was like I was obsessed with it, something that I did. I would do all my homework in school. So as soon as I got home from school, I would skate until it got dark. And it was like that for years. Like,
That's crazy. So you weren't obsessed with baseball then?
no.
So you just didn't like
Like it was
baseball,
like I enjoyed it. I had fun playing it, but it was nothing like
skateboarding.
skateboarding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So when I met you in 15, when we were 15 years old, that's when you were in high school. We were
Hmm.
like in 10th grade or so, and you were very quiet, kind of just
Yeah.
to yourself. But you did skate, and you're pretty good at it. A
Hmm.
lot of a lot of our friends were pretty good at it. I wasn't good at it, but you were one
Yeah.
of them that were really good, and there was also a lot of our other friends that were pretty good in different ways. You were
Yeah.
good at certain tricks and skate, like I think stairs and stuff. and
Yeah.
some people were good at like doing jumping off roofs, and some people were doing good at like the
Yeah.
ramps and stuff. But yeah, you definitely did skateboard a lot. And then one of the things that I remember is like when you used to get all mad, you would like hit yourself in the head or something with the skateboard. What was that from? What did that come from?
I don't know. Maybe that was my mom's crazy side coming out because, I would feel like I expected a certain level out of myself, and if I would not be able to do a trick that I feel like I should have been able to do, like if I was trying to kick flip a three stair, and for this particular day, it took me five times or like more than it should, like I would get pissed off, like what the fuck? And like it would just set me off. I don't know what it was, but I would lose control over myself. I'd start punching the wall, kicking things, punching my skateboard, punching myself, yelling. Like I was pretty wild back then.
Uh, I kind of had that thing too. Like you just have a high standard for yourself. You want perfectionist. So you're kind of a perfectionist. I kind of am a little bit too.
Yeah.
So it's like when you don't get that, you're like, what the heck? You get so mad at yourself and you're just kind of like punishing yourself because it's like,
Yeah.
why? Like I'm better than that. So
Yeah,
that's kind of a
exactly.
crazy
Like
thing.
I did this yesterday, my first try. Why is it taking me 20 times to do it today? I don't understand it. It pissed me off.
Exactly. But that was a lot of exercise. And, like obviously when we were younger, I used to do the same thing. I would bike and skateboard and, run around. So we were pretty thin and fit back then, right? You were pretty fit, obviously.
Yeah, I was like high school, I was probably 6 foot and like a buck 50, just skinny, scrawny. I almost felt like I couldn't put on weight. I don't know if it was due
Yeah.
to the fact that I was literally skateboarding, from when I got out of school till night every day. But I would eat like 5, 6 Whoppers from like Burger King in like a sitting, just go there, get 5 or 6 Whoppers and just pound them down. And wouldn't gain any weight. Took me a while actually. I don't think it was until I was like 18 where I started going to the gym, where I started putting on more weight.
Yeah, that's crazy because I heard that recently too. Like when you're young, like you have a high metabolism and your hormones
Mhm.
might have something to do with it. But we could eat all day long, eat pizzas, sodas, and I used to do the same thing. I would just eat so much. But I just think the same thing too. It's like, we literally are out there for not just 1 hour. Because if you go run for like 15 minutes, an hour, a half an hour, you're losing like 100 calories, 200 calories. But when you're just
Yeah.
skateboarding all day long, like you're from out of school from like 3:30 to like till dark, till like 7:30.
Yeah.
So like 4 hours straight. And that's cardio too. Like you're going at it. Like you're not just brisk walking, you're
Yeah,
going at it.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
I don't know if that has
there'd be a lot of days too where it was probably every day where I would be so sweaty that how you get so sweaty like you have that like the salt crystals on your face
Yep.
when your sweat dries. I think I sweat more than the average person too, so I would just be drenched, my face would be all grainy and shit.
And then also you got the heat from California heat as well.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure that played a part in it.
So then, okay, so you were exercising then. And then, you start turning 15, you're in your adolescence, you're a young man now, starting to get your first girlfriend and stuff like that. Um, then you started drinking, right? Like was drinking your first kind of substance you did, or was it weed, or was it a cigarette, or what was it?
Mm, I think I actually smoked weed first. I was probably around like 17 or 18, maybe 16, 17, somewhere around there, probably around like 16 to 18. And the only reason why I did stop drinking is because my high school girlfriend at the time, I told her that I was smoking weed, and I think we kind of had like a falling out. But I was trying to like make the relationship work. We're trying to get back together, and she's like, "I don't want you smoking weed," and I'm like, "Wait, hold on, no, no, no. It was the drinking first. I drank first, and then I started smoking because I promised her that I wouldn't drink. I had it
Oh, okay.
backwards. So yeah, alcohol was the
It ruined your first
first.
relationship.
Yeah, well,
Well, alcohol ruins a
I
lot of
think it was other things.
relationships. Yeah.
So alcohol first, and
What was
then,
it? What other things? Now you got me curious. Just
well,
real
no, I
quick.
think
Oh, you
I
may get
still
to it.
had a problem not being able to like control my emotions. I remember little things would like set me off, and I would say shit that I would just lose control and say stupid shit or
Yeah.
kind of storm off and like, oh fuck this, we're arguing, I'm out of here, and I'm just gonna leave.
Yeah. So we're all hard headed when we're young kids, like, and you're
Yeah,
just learning your emotions and you're learning love and all that kind of stuff. So it's like you're still navigating all that new area. So it's hard to know how to deal with. So yeah, that makes sense. But
yeah.
then so you started drinking first, then you stopped, and then you started smoking weed. Um,
Hmm.
and then like I didn't start drinking until I was 17, and I
Okay.
didn't smoke weed till like later. But like so 17, I remember going to your house, like we would like smoke and drink. What? Then you started drinking more, and we started
Yeah, I
having
think
parties at your
once the
house.
relationship was like over, and I knew there was no chance it was gonna make it work, I'm like, well, fuck, I'm gonna start drinking. Like, I promised her I wasn't gonna drink, but now that it's off the it's off the table, like I'm gonna start drinking. Like my peers were drinking, so it was just like, let's do it.
So at first, like when you first start drinking like that, you're just having fun because you're a kid. Everyone else is doing it. You don't really think
Yeah.
of anything else like, is this gonna be bad for me in the future? And because now we're
Oh
40,
no.
you're 41. You're just at that
Yeah.
time, it's just like let's have fun. Like I was at my first party. I just thought like, oh, all these girls are going and it's gonna be cool. I'm in the cool crowd. Like
Yeah.
I used to be kind of nerdy, like in the nerdy crowd. And then in high school, like around like 11th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, start getting the cool crowd. And you're like, oh man, now like I'm cool now. So now you're doing you want to do what they do, which is obviously not your environment kind of thing too. Like you're doing what
Yeah,
the environment
exactly.
does, and your environment is drinking. And that's what you kind of pick up what they do, right?
Yep, that was kind of like the thing. I feel like when we were younger, it was pretty much every weekend. It was like, what party are we going to? And there was always something going on. And obviously, if you're going to a party, people are drinking.
Hmm.
So that's what we did. We went to
Yep.
parties and we drank and probably got high. And
And
I
then
feel like that's probably what normal people, or I don't know about normal, but that's what our friend group was doing at the time. So
yeah. So then, like, so your mom is somewhere else, and then you're living with your dad over there in Fontana,
mhm.
and then, could you tell us what happened with your mom, like at that time, around what, like age 19?
Yeah, at 19, I know my mom, I don't know if she's always just had financial problems, but I know she would ask my dad, like call him from time to time, like, hey, I need help with this, I need help with that. Can you send me some money? And I think he would like in the beginning, but he got to a point where I think he was just fed up, like, I can't just keep sending you money. And he was almost thinking that she would make up stories just to get money. So she had called and said that she like broke her arm or something and she needed money for like the medical expenses. And he's just like, I don't believe you. I'm not gonna send the money. And then it was sometime after that she ended up, committing suicide. And
Yeah.
it wasn't until I actually went back to Taiwan. We went back to Taiwan to pick up her ashes. Like I was probably 16. Shit. Trying to think how old I was. I might have even been older. No, no.
She
It was
passed away
much
when you're 19.
I was gonna say much older.
And then when you
I was
picked
in
up
my
her
mid
ashes, it
20s.
was later on in the 30s, because
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
early 30s, late 20s, because I remember me and your nephew were hanging out when you were over there in Taiwan.
Yeah.
You went with your
Yeah,
sister.
the reason the ways that she did it too, I'm like, man, out of all the ways you could have done it, she ended up taking like rat poison. So and I've talked to my sister about it. I'm like, damn, that must be like a horrible way to go. Like your fucking probably stomach is probably hurting. You're probably fucking vomiting. And then, since it's a slow death, like you could have the regret, but at that point, it's like you've already done, it's already too late. You kind of just, you fucked yourself. But doing it, having that slow death, I'm like, damn, you could have so much regret and just regret fucking doing it, have your life reflection and all
Yeah.
that. And then when my sister said some like weird stuff about it, because when we went to Taiwan, we actually slept in her room. And when I was over there, I was drinking like a fish. But she's like, yeah, in the middle of the night, you like woke up and you're just standing there. And she's like, it sounded like you were speaking in Taiwanese, like, and she was like, what? And she's like, I'm like half asleep, so I don't know what you're saying. So I'm like, what? And he's like, and you say it again, and then you just get back in bed and go to sleep. And she's like, it almost made me feel like it was mom trying to tell me something through you. And I'm like, oh, I was like, I don't
Oh,
remember that. But like I said, I was drinking like a fish. I was drunk, so I could have just been slurring.
yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
just
I've always thought about that. Like, damn, rat poison.
yeah,
Like,
that's it. Any way to like to go doing that is just horrible. But yeah, that's definitely a good point. That's a crazy thing to think of. Like you have to sit there and go through that. That's a traumatic experience. And like if anyone's out there struggling with suicide or has somebody there's places you could reach out. Maybe you could even reach out to Steven and talk to him about it if you want to, Steven. I don't know if talked about that because you've been through it before. But
Yeah.
how did that affect you, like as a 19-year-old kid? Though? Like, because I was hanging out with you and I really didn't even know. Like, I couldn't like maybe I was like doing other things because I was partying too and having fun. So I don't know. I didn't really too much even kind of know that your mom did that at that time.
Yeah. And I'm from what my sister tells me, it wasn't her first time trying suicide. I guess she tried to OD on pills before. She tried to slit her wrist before.
Oh
So I
wow.
guess, it was the third time. So the
Was
third
it?
time, third
They
time's hard.
obviously had to be in a depressed state, like, but do you think like it was like people were out to get her too, or like I don't know, just the divorce or the gambling, or just she wasn't like addicted to
Maybe
substances?
not that I'm aware of. I know she used
Uh,
to smoke weed. She probably drank.
okay.
But I'm thinking it's just like a little bit of everything. Maybe her not being able, like financially stable, having her kids in a different freaking country, and maybe even just feeling a little bit alone, like, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
and basically have no one to talk to. I'm sure, she had her family over there, but I spoke to her every once in a while when she would call, but I was young too. It wasn't like, in my mind, it wasn't, I didn't ever have the thought like, oh, I'm gonna call mom and see how she's doing. Like, I was a
Yeah.
kid. Like, I would, when I got home, I'm playing or hanging out with my friends. Like, um, and I don't know. I don't know if it sounds fucked up to say, but when she did pass, yeah, like, I did cry a little bit. But I think since she was in Taiwan and I didn't really see her often and I
Yeah.
didn't talk to her a lot, it was hard for me to kind of miss her because like she wasn't really there in the first place.
That makes
Like
sense.
the thought of it hurt, but like my day to day, not much changed in it. It wasn't like I came home and her room was empty and there was like a void there.
Yeah.
I didn't have any of that since she was already gone.
That makes sense.
So it was more like when I thought about it, I cried, but I really didn't cry too much when it happened. I maybe felt like I probably cried more like when I was picking up her ashes and like thinking
Yeah.
about it when I was older.
Yeah. They have a saying like called out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. Like,
Yeah,
people aren't
exactly.
focused on their thing. And like just for the viewers out there, like Steven agreed to talk about this. He talks about it openly and stuff. But I know it's a very touchy subject, and if you went out there and you hear this, like my heart goes out to anybody that has to deal with that or going through that. And I hope if you are thinking about that, you I don't know, try to find some resources or someone to talk to, or open up to somebody because it is a serious thing. But um,
Yeah.
to go even more into after that, you were 19. What did that do to your mentality? Like, were you just kind of like still just kind of going, living your life, doing your thing? You're young, you're still like trying to grow your own life. You were still partying at the time. Did that create any like mental depression, or was it make you more resilient, or did it make you think of any way, or how did that affect you mentally?
I think at the time, not much really changed for me. I think I kept going through,
Your
my
day-to-day
little
routine.
routine, my little life that I had, and
Yeah.
since like I said, I feel like it didn't have too much of an impact on me.
Yeah.
That I just kind of kept going on about my days.
Okay. So then, we were partying and having fun. You're going by day of your life, and then something else happened. And I think there was the next year, right?
Yeah.
One more year, like 20 years old. And this
Yeah.
one affected you a lot more, right? What happened there?
Yeah, well, when I was 20, it was like almost a year to the date. I think it was like a month off or something. But yeah, my dad ended up passing from, what they wrote in the coroner's report is chronic alcoholism. So I'm sure his liver was shot. Um, the night before, he had an argument with my sister, and I remember he was like, even that night, he was eating some like Carl's Jr., some probably like greasy hamburger. And my sister went upstairs after they fought and like was going to bed because she had to work the next day. And he was over there sitting down. And he's like, Steven, go get your sister. He's like, I can't even eat my food. I'm so freaking mad. So I tried to get her like a couple of times. She doesn't want to come down. She's like, just tell him I'm sleeping. I don't want to talk to him. So I go down there. I'm like, she's sleeping. She doesn't want to talk. And he's like, tell her to come down here now. So I go back up, tell her that dad says he wants to talk to you. He's not going to stop bothering you until you come down. So she finally comes down. and they kind of had like a heart to heart. It was like me, I think Mikey was there, Catherine, but she was small, and my sister. We all kind of had a heart to heart. We all hugged. We all told each other we loved each other. And
Oh,
then, the next day he ended up passing, which is kind of weird. It was like I don't know if he knew, and it was like his way of saying his goodbyes. But I know my sister said that, if she never would have woken up to go downstairs to talk to him, and then he passed, she's like, I would have felt so bad that, I didn't give him like or like let that relationship have like the closure kind of.
yeah, that is crazy because like when someone passes away like that, like the first thing you think of is like the last thing you said to them, like and how you. So
Yeah.
that's cool. I didn't know about that, but yeah, so he died, and that really affected you. I remember that day because I was at work, and then they're like, "Oh, Steven's dad died," and I went over there, and you were just in the garage standing there in one spot. You don't remember this, but
Yeah.
yeah, I remember like you were just standing there, just with your head down, obviously bawling out, crying, like could not stop, and you just couldn't, like it's just obviously like your dad just died, the closest person
Yeah.
to you, and that one is affected you a lot different because it was something that your day to day. You come home and your dad
Yeah,
was very
exactly.
close. You were very close to your dad, and you guys bonded a lot about, you were pretty much a lot like him in a lot of ways, and
Mhm.
especially at that time. But how did that affect you mentally and at that time?
That one, I felt like that one just broke me. Um, like you said, like I don't the only thing I really remember is like I come home. I was at my girlfriend's house at the time. I think Mike called me, said, "You need to come home. Something's wrong with your dad." So I hop in my car, I drive, and I park. And when I park, I see like the fire trucks there, the ambulance is there, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, because it was so sudden. He was
Mhm.
only 53. I
Yeah.
start, and this is where the story is. This is my perspective of it. Is that I walk into the grass, and my neighbor Shane tells me he's like I don't know how to tell you this, but like your dad passed away, and then I fall to my knees and I kind of grab him and I just start crying. Like that's all I remember. But I told that story to Mike, my friend, my best friend Mike at the time, and he was like, "No," he's like, "I told you that." He's like, "You were crying into my stomach," and I'm like, no, because I could clearly remember in my head it being my neighbor.
Yeah.
So, but I'm sure my emotions, everything was all out of whack,
Oh, definitely.
and my memory wasn't. That's what I remember. I'm sure my memory is a little shoddy, but I don't remember anything else. Like I don't, and I remember Irving coming. I remember we had like a falling out, but that was something
Yeah.
that he ended up coming just because all my friends were always at my house. So everyone knew my dad. My dad was cool with all my friends. So it's like I remember Irving said he's like, we all lost a dad today just because
Yeah.
my dad was cool with all you guys. He treated you guys, I feel like, like family.
Yeah. I know. Like I told Irving because you did have a falling out, and I called him, and I was like, let's go to Steven's house. And he's like, no. He's like, fuck
Yeah.
that. And I was like, his dad just passed away. And he's like, all right, I'm coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me emotional. Like, yeah, your dad was really awesome. Like, I really liked your dad a lot too. Like, my dad was a little bit more strict, and like we would go to your house. Like I had
Mhm.
some cool parties when we were 17 at your house that your dad would
Yeah.
just let you throw. Like, my dad would never let me do that. Like he lets all these 17, 18-year-olds just having parties at his house. Like, he was just a cool dad. It was like kind of like a safe zone. Like he would rather
Yeah.
just be at the house than going out and getting in trouble and getting in like injured or dying or something. So like it was like, no, just you're allowed to, and then he would get mad too sometimes when we're there because we're being too loud or whatever. We're being
Yeah.
drunk, stupid.
Yeah, that's one thing he always told me. He's like, I'd rather have you guys just do that shit here. I don't want to have to worry about you guys out there drinking and driving, doing stupid shit. He's like, at least if you're here, he's like, you guys are safe. You don't have to drive after. You just spend the night here. And he's like, I think, that probably gave him a peace of mind knowing that his son wasn't out there doing all this crazy shit.
Yep.
I was downstairs or whatever.
Yeah. So then he passed away, and then so like you said, he was 53, and your mom, she when she passed away, she was 49, right? You said.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought those are two relatively young ages
Mhm.
to lose to die, and then also you being 19 and 20, that's a very young age to lose both of your parents. So now you have no parents
Mhm.
living, and you're at a house where it was just you and him living. So now you're by yourself. So now your whole world gets turned over. You got to move in with your sister or something like that. You sell the house eventually. and you're moving around. So you had that like the stables house with you and your dad, you know, the consistency, and then it all gets turned up and just thrown around. And there's no one else to go to
Mhm.
at a young age. So that was pretty
I was
crazy.
gonna say, at the time, my sister and Mikey were living there, so it was
Oh,
me,
okay.
Catherine, Mikey, and
So it's four,
then
yeah. So it's the
yeah,
whole.
and then my
And
dad.
so that's
But it was
for the audience. That's your sister and your nephew and your niece.
yes.
Yeah.
Um,
No, that's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was weird at first, just coming home because, I was used to coming home and, hey, dad, what's up? Or at least some sort of small talk. And then, the house just felt empty. You know what I mean? Like there's a
Definitely.
presence that's missing that you're used to being there. And it was kind of weird. And we ended up moving out of the house. I'd probably say 6 months later. I remember my sister, she's like, I can't live here. So I'm like, all
Yeah.
right, well, let's move. We moved.
Yeah. So that affected like at that time, like go back into your health. Like you know, we were drinking, like so like you say you're 19 and 20. At the
Hmm.
20 years old, we were going, I know we are going to TJ like a little bit, looking ready to turn 21, start going
Yeah.
to the bars for real, you know. So we started at TJ's drinking and we would drink all the time, pretty much all the weekend. And I think that
Yeah.
kind of like went along with it as well. Like, you know, your dad died of chronic alcoholism, and then here we are drinking every day, you know, like every weekend
Yeah.
pretty much, you know, like smoking weed every day, drinking every day. And you also started getting into other things too, like you done shrooms too, right? And all that stuff.
Yeah. I actually, the first time I did mushrooms, my
You're
dad
actually just
was,
to say you are pro psychedelics.
yeah, I think they're beneficial,
Yeah.
if you do them with the right intent, set and setting, all that, I don't think it's a drug or a plan or a medicine, whatever you want to call it, that you should just be doing going to parties. Like you can do it, but I think there's more to them than that. And you know, that's kind
Yeah,
of my
but
take
you've
on
always
it.
been kind of a guy that's like, you know, I've always been curious too, but you have always been curious about like spiritual things like inside yourself, like the mind, like the universe, and like you're just a very like curious person and open to a bunch of like outside of the box kind of reality kind of things. And that kind
Mhm.
of help those kind of psychedelics kind of help you with that, right? And like
Yeah.
kind of like experiencing like different realms and stuff. So, but you did start doing it around like the same age as you started drinking stuff when you started experimenting a little
Yeah.
psychedelics.
Yeah, and plus I think a couple of my friends at the time were doing them, so they're like, "Hey, you want to try mushrooms?" And I was a carefree spirit. I was young. I had no idea what they did, but I'm like, "Sure, let's try it." I heard it makes you like see stuff, you hallucinate, like, but that's like the extent that I knew. I'm like, "All right, let's try it." And I think I want to say maybe not the first time, but one of the first times I did it was at my house, and I remember I was freaking out because I was worried that my dad was gonna find out. I'm like, oh man, like he's totally if he sees me right now, he's totally gonna know I'm shrooming because I
Yeah.
am tripping balls right now. And I
I was
remember I
there
was
a couple
freaking out.
times.
I remember I was calling you, or I was texting you, like, I think I told you something outrageous to get you to come because I was like, I need someone sober here to make sure that I'm not
You're
doing
like, I'm
something
gonna kill my
stupid.
dad.
Yeah, that's what I said. I was like, I'm gonna kill my dad.
So I'm
Bye.
like,
And I
I
think
better go over before you.
yeah, I was like, you need to come here, or I'm gonna kill my dad. And then I hung up or something.
But you know,
But
but you also know, like the viewers, like he was just a dark kind of comedy guy, so he was just joking a little bit. But who knows?
yeah, yeah. Obviously, I would never kill my dad,
We
but
like to
I
fuck
was
around
trying
with
to
dark
just
jokes.
make it sound urgent so you would get over there.
Yeah.
This is why too, because we were videotaping it, and I remember I had the camera, and I was in the back seat of a car. And then I think I had the camera in my hand for so long that it almost felt like it was part of me. And when I went to put the camera down, it felt like my hand came off. And then I started to think, I'm like, what if I really think I'm in the car doing mushrooms, but my body's really out somewhere else doing something else? And that's what got me like, I need a sober person here to make sure that like I'm really here. Because I was like, my one of my first times doing psychedelics, I didn't know what to expect, what happens, or how it's supposed to be. But that was
Yeah.
my state of mind. Like my body's outside doing something dangerous, but I think it's safe in this car.
Yeah, so that's funny because that like that kind of gives the frame of where we were in our early 20s. You know, you were doing psychedelics. I wasn't. I was kind of scared to try that because the stories I heard. But but we were smoking weed like heavily. Like we had
Yeah.
like a whole bong collection and stuff. We were drinking all the time. You know, like, but like like this was like, you know, we're helped over everything now. Like this is like kind of like what we went through to get like and how we got to where we're at right now. So like,
Exactly.
this is when we're very young. And then like I remember even though you were doing a bunch of bad habits, like we were at this time, you were still eating and we were both, eating fast food, eating
Yeah.
bad food. We weren't doing any of that. Like we were still pretty thin because I don't know, I were just young, I guess, but we were drinking and smoking and straight West Coasting, as they call it. But you were also doing some like uh martial arts, right? You were really big into like UFC at that time. I wasn't. And
Yeah.
like that's when it first started, kind of UFC, but you were really into martial arts. You started training with like your cousins. And I remember we'd go to like your cousin's house and there'd be a bunch of guys who would all smoke weed and you guys would just wrestle and do moves on each other. Like and start getting pissed at each other eventually. It's like you wanted to kill each other, but you guys loved each other. But you would just do moves on each other. It would do something to piss somebody off. And they were like, all right, I'm
Yeah.
gonna go a little harder on you now. And it was just like back and forth. And it turned into like almost a fight, really, but it wasn't an actual fight. But you
Yeah.
got really you started training with a guy named Greg, right? And like, tell us about that a little bit, like, and your love for martial arts at that time.
Yeah, I kind of got obsessed with martial arts for a little bit. My cousin Mike actually met the guy. He worked at Ralph's in Norwalk, and I guess this guy would always come in and shop with his karate uniform, his gi on. So eventually, my cousin started talking with him, and he started training with him, and then he brought his brother, and then eventually I got involved with it. So I'm trying to think, I think it was only us three training at the time. Yeah, this guy was kind of unorthodox. He'd have us just doing weird shit, and we'd actually like get punched. He would I remember one of his rules, like you always got as soon as you got to his house, like your hands had to be up. Like
Yeah,
if
I
your
remember
hands were
that.
down at any point, anyone there could deck you in the chest. It was like it's just open season on you. So I think I got hit once, and then I learned like, oh, like he hit fucking hard too. I think he was in his 50s, but I remember
Yeah.
my chest hurt for like 2 to 3 days, and I'm like, yeah, that was the first and the last time I ever got caught slipping. And the way he did it too, he's just like walking by like he was gonna get something, and just boom, just freaking plowed me. Um, but yeah, he was a little bit different. And then, me and my cousin, this is YouTubers around at that point. So we would go on YouTube and just look up different like, submissions as far as like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu went. We trained the stand-up with Greg, and then we would do the jiu-jitsu stuff, just YouTube it, like, oh, let's go on YouTube and figure out what submissions are what, how to do it, the technique, and then we would just practice on each other. But he was probably like obsessive like me.
Oh yeah,
And
definitely.
you know, you guys probably thought we were crazy back in the day, but we did it. Me and my cousin, we were close, and I don't know, we would just kind of feed off of each other. Where we would watch that movie Bloodsport. There was a scene where the guys they're kicking each other in the rib, and Van Damme's like come on, like kick me. And they're just trading kick for kick. And me and
Yeah.
my cousin, we would do shit like that too. Like we would put our hands on each other's shoulders and just hit each other in the ribs. And eventually, it gets crazy where you're hitting each other hard. No one, we never broke any bones or anything, but it's like one person goes a little too hard, and then the other person tries to match that energy. And I think it was good at the time. Is like, I think it was almost like a form of brainwashing where we were like almost learning to enjoy the pain.
You got like pretty like a six pack and stuff back then too. Like you're pretty workout wise, you were pretty good, right?
Yeah, I was still pretty lean.
You were really skinny still, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was still young though. I'm trying to think.
I just remember like at the bars and stuff, you would literally let people like go up to like some guys, random people, and talk to them about karate or whatever. Like I don't know if it's called karate, but
You
martial
want to hit
arts.
me?
And you let them sock you in the stomach. You used to let me field goal, like a field goal kicker, kick you in the stomach while you're in a push-up position. So like
Yeah.
you were kind of like just taking the force, and it's just kind of crazy. I'm just like, you're crazy, like, and people would just be in awe, like at the bars and stuff. Like, and like I sock hard, I punch hard. You
Yeah.
really want me to punch you? You're like, yes, punch me. And they just punch you as hard as they can in the stomach, and you just be like, huh, and just drink your beer after.
Yeah, I'm surprised I never got into any like fights, like saying that shit to people. Like, oh, you want me to hit you? Like, fucking, I'll just deck you in the face. But
Yeah,
yeah, me and my cousin, we would hit each other. Like that was kind of like part of our training. We would hit each other in the stomach. So, and it was like really nothing out of the ordinary. Plus, I think by getting hit, you kind of learn how to take a hit. Like you don't sit there like a wall and just absorb all the impact. Like when you get hit, you kind of move with it,
yeah.
and it kind of helps cushion it a little bit. So it might appear that you're getting hit hard, But if you're like, if my back was against the wall and someone was drilling into you, like you could probably break something like that. But since I'm just standing there and I can move with the punch,
Mhm.
it just it doesn't hurt as much.
So what are kind of like some philosophies and mental toughness or disciplines that Greg taught you?
Um, I'll always remember this. One thing that he would do, we would typically train like in public settings, like at parks or anything. Um, One thing that he taught us, like whenever somebody would like look at us, like oh, like what are those guys doing? He would always tell us to like wave at them and say hi. And he was always like, if you're worried about what other people are thinking when you're fighting, he's like, you're not in the fight and you're gonna lose because you're not focused on the fight. He's like,
Hmm.
don't worry about what other people are thinking and but to pay attention to your surroundings as well. He was like, because if you're fighting someone and you hear someone say, "Hey, John," knee him in the face, or you like, or to do a move, and he's like, and you're not John, and you don't have a friend named John, so to expect something like that coming. So
Yeah,
he's like, be aware of your surroundings, but not care too much about what other people think too. I
yeah.
think I that's probably a big lesson that I learned from him.
I remember he
Besides,
talked about
besides the
all the time.
martial
Do
arts.
you ever keep in touch with him and you know where he's at now?
We're friends on Facebook. He's in
Oh, okay.
San Francisco. Actually, I haven't seen him
It must be in the
post
70s
too
now.
often. Yeah, I'm all thinking because he used to post quite a bit, but I haven't seen him post in a while. I'm like, I wonder if he's all right.
Yeah,
Maybe
gotta
he's
check
not
up on
on
him.
it anymore.
Okay, so then after that, like you kept drinking a lot and we were drinking and stuff, like and then so like we're in our 20s now, like we used to party all the time, right? Like and then you
Yeah,
eventually got a girlfriend and you moved to like you were kind of away for a while and then you came back after 4 or 5 years of like
yeah,
on you, whatever, but you were still drinking and like that kind of led to that ending of this long relationship that you had too. Like alcohol started becoming
yeah.
like, is that when you started thinking that it became a problem, or did you ever, when did you think that alcohol became like a problem?
I guess I don't know. A lot of that is perspective. I feel like it didn't really start affecting like my well-being up until like around the time that I stopped. Maybe, maybe even a few years before that. Um
So about 4 years ago from now?
Let me see. So I stopped about 3 years ago. So maybe I'm gonna say maybe 8 years. Like maybe it was like something that I like contemplated, like, man, maybe I should like tone it down on the drinking, but it wasn't anything
So like
that I
early
took
30s.
serious. Yeah, it wasn't anything that I took serious enough to like completely stop it. Because I know there was a time when we went to Vegas and I was just like maybe at that point I started thinking I had a problem with my drinking because I remember going there and I wasn't drinking for 30 days. It was like I got to prove it to myself that I could not drink for 30 days.
Yeah.
And during that 30 days, it was like, oh, let's go to Vegas. I'm like, this fucking would happen. I'm trying to not drink, and we're going to a Vegas trip, like, because whenever we went to Vegas, you go there, you party, you drink. That's like what we did out there. So
Yeah.
for me to be sober, and I'm like, this is just a test. This is a test to see if you can do it or not. Like, you pick this month, are you going to do it or not? And I remember you were there and you were like, let's get a fucking drink. And I was like, I'm
The bad
actually
influence.
not drinking. And you're like, what do you mean you're not drinking? I'm like, yeah, I'm not drinking for 30 days. And I don't know if you were mad about that, but
I was kind of mad about it. I wanted to party.
yeah.
So
So
like
maybe that
this
was
is
like the first time that I maybe started thinking like maybe it is an issue, but it wasn't I guess I didn't take it serious at that time. It was just something like, oh, let's do 30 days. And then after 30 days, I just went back to doing drinking like I used to.
yeah, so fitness. I'm just looking at your fitness mentality because you became fitness mentality, and this was about 2014. So that's 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, so 10 years ago, you actually that's when you stopped the drinking and stuff for a while, and you actually got a six pack. You got really swole, and you were just in on it. Like so that was in
Mhm.
2014. So you're 41 now. That was when you're 31. In your 20s, we never really cared. Like we were just partying in our whole 20s, having
Yeah.
fun. But like so around like early 30s, that's kind of like me too. It's like you're turning 30, you're getting a little bit older, so you're trying to think you're out of your adolescence now. It's time to like everyone else is getting families and kids and stuff like that.
Hmm.
It's kind of like you're thinking about this stuff, and you also had a serious relationship went away.
Hmm.
I think that might have had something to do with it, or no? Or like you're like, okay, like, I'm gonna prove that I can stop drinking and get really fit and like because usually when somebody gets out of a long relationship, they're usually trying to like they either go two different ways, either like plummet into the darkness or try to like better themselves.
Yeah. Maybe I can't, I'm trying to think about it. I was like, maybe I went into the darkness for a little bit, but at some point I'm like, all right, well, we can't throw a pity party forever. Let's change things. And, at that point, I kind of fell in love with working out and fitness. Like there were certain lifts that I feel most people want to build their chest, but I was all about the squats. I was trying to see how heavy I could get in my squats, and I was pretty dedicated at that time. Like my
Yes, you were.
nutrition was on point. I was weighing all my foods out. I had like a progressive overload routine. I think I was doing a push-pull leg routine. So it was push-pull legs, 2 times a week. So I do push-pull legs, rest,
Yeah.
push-pull legs. And it got to the point where I didn't even want to take any days off. So I was just doing that routine repeatedly for a few months. I didn't really see any negative side effects from that, but yeah, I was taking no days off. Some days I would go to the gym twice, once before work in the morning, like at 4 to do cardio, and then after work I would hit the weights. But I felt like I was probably like the strongest I've ever been. Now that I'm older, there's a lot of those exercises I can't do, which I don't know. It kind of makes me sad a little bit because I do miss, trying to bench, doing deadlifts, doing the heavy squats. But my wrist, now that I'm older, isn't jiving with me too well. So I'm kind of babying it as much as I can. I am trying to work around it, doing some exercises with this arm, but like stuff like a heavy bench, like I think it would be too much stress on my wrist.
Yeah, I'm just looking at your old fitness mentality page. Like, yeah, I see. Yeah, yeah. You just say you went 60 days without alcohol on one of these
Nice.
posts, and yeah, you lost 15 to 20 pounds. You can see you had a belly, and then you went to a six pack. So you were
Yeah.
in on it. Like this is 2013, 2014. So you're 30, 31 years old. So that's
Yeah,
what.
it's funny too, because I was even looking back at those pictures more recently when I started kind of losing the weight, and I'm like, I'm the same weight I was back then. I was like, but I look so much better then. It's because,
Yeah,
obviously I was lifting weights and I was working out on the regular, which is maybe what got me back into kind of working out now is because I'm like, I'm skinny to like at some point I lost the weight and I'm like I'm right around like my fitness mentality weight. I was like, but my body does not look the same.
yeah.
And that's I think one of the factors that kind of got me back into it more recently. And it's like, well, let's see. I'm like, I'm in my 40s. Let's do this. Let's see what I'm capable of and let's push ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, it's just crazy because your first picture in 2012, you could just tell in your face you're really fat. So that's when
Yeah.
you're
All
29,
around.
and then you just got lean. So like, so in your 20s we partied a lot. Then you got in this one phase in fitness vitality in your early
Mhm.
30s where you were just boom, you were on point. Like you were doing really good and you're working out, but then it ended up falling off, and you ended up getting the fattest and out of shape that you've ever been. And what
Yeah.
happened with that? Why'd that happen?
It's funny. I think my goal when I was doing that was like I wanted to get like as ripped as I can. I wanted to get the six pack. And once I think I had like a goal weight of getting to like 175. And once I hit 173, I was like, all right, I did it. Now I'm done. It's like I got the six
Mhm.
pack,
Yeah.
and I don't know why I didn't continue on it, but it was just almost like that was my goal. That was like the end destination. And as soon as I got there, it was like it was. I guess I lost my I don't know my drive for it. I just kind of fell off, started drinking again, and I got back into those old habits.
Yeah, so it looks like your first post on it was 2013. So you started doing 2014, and the
Hmm.
2015 was like your last post. So like
Yeah,
you did it for
so I
like a
did it
year or
for a
two.
year. Yeah.
Yeah, like a year or two or something like maybe a year. So then
Hmm.
2015, which that's 9 years ago, you would have been 32 years old and then you fell off, right? So
Yeah.
then I remember you got a girlfriend at the time, and then like I think like that kind of had something to do with it, in my opinion. Like you were doing
It
really good.
could.
You got this girlfriend. She was kind of fitness too, and then you kind of just got comfortable a little bit, and then
Yeah.
everything just spirals out of control, right? And then you ended up breaking up with her, and then you found a new girlfriend, right? Like your current fiance.
Yep.
So, but you known her for a very long time, right? Like
Yeah, since
since
high
high
school.
school. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
then,
with I think after I met Valerie, my fiance, that is when I blew up to like my biggest point. Like I always joke with her and say like, oh, when you got pregnant, I got pregnant with you. Um, yeah, I was still drinking. I was eating whatever the hell I want. There was just like, yeah, no discipline whatsoever. I
no
wasn't working
discipline.
out. Um, we still joke to this day, like back in the day, like I would not eat at a place if it wasn't like all you can eat. Whenever we were shopping around for like, hey, let's go get sushi. I'm like, all right, well, just make sure they have all you can eat because I'm trying to like, that was my goal. Like, I'm trying to eat as much as I can. Like, I'm gonna make my $20, $30 worth it. They're gonna pay the price for letting me have all you can eat. Like, that's my what was like my mentality going into it. And it was like that with a lot of places. Like, I would love just to do all you can eat, so I could eat all the crab legs I could, just whatever the hell I wanted to eat, just overindulge and like fitness or health wasn't on my mind at all.
And let me tell you,
Probably
people,
should
this
have
boy
probably
can
should have been.
eat. This boy
Yeah,
can eat.
I
And now
can.
that's why he works out and like burns a lot of calories now, so he could still eat a lot because he loves to eat. But this time he's eating quality, healthy food now,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
We're doing it different this time around.
that's crazy. So then, like, your kid is what, 6 years old now, turning
Yep.
7 this year.
Yep. It'll be 7 in
So
September.
you had him when you were how old?
Shit, 34?
Well, you'll be 41 now.
35.
30, yeah, 34. You're 34 years old.
34, 35.
So yeah, so you started working out. You stopped working out like like 31 and you started working out 31, then you went to like a couple of years, and so the 33, 34, and they finally had a kid, and then at some point you realized like you had a alcohol problem, right?
Yeah, I think the way it kind of happened too is that I just got into a place where I felt like I was in a funk and I don't know if it was necessarily like a depression, but I always say it was like I felt like I was in a funk. Like I just wasn't happy. Felt like I had nothing going for me, and I just was at a point in my life where I just wasn't happy. And at the time too, it's like I know I have so many things to be thankful for. I had my son, I had my fiance, but it was something I think within myself I just wasn't happy with. So, I kind of had to do like a self-analysis, some reflecting, and I think around this time too, I was like thinking like yeah, I probably should stop drinking. I want to stop drinking, but I just never pulled the trigger on it until for me it felt like my rock bottom. Like I had to hit rock bottom before I was like, all right, let's stop with the drinking and I was listening to some videos too where I almost felt like I remember the guy in the video was saying he's like you get to a point in your life where you realize like every single thing that's happened to you in your life, even the bad stuff, has got you to the point where you're at today. And you realize that it wasn't all for nothing, that like all the pain you went through is for something. Like it made you into who you are today.
Hmm.
And that kind of him saying that kind of opened something in my eyes because it made me start thinking about my son. Like, imagine that. I was like, imagine if my dad, never, died the way he did, or my mom never committed suicide. I was like, maybe I wouldn't be where I'm at. And I had such like a love for my son. I'm like thinking of him not existing kind of hit me in the heart where I'm like, no, like I wouldn't trade anything for my son. Like so it got me to kind of think about him more and like what am I doing with my life? And I just made a decision like I don't want to put my son through the same thing that my dad made. I don't know if you want to say made me go through, but the same thing that I went through with my dad.
Yeah.
He had died from alcoholism. I was like, how selfish of me would it be to make my son go through that same process that I went through? Like knowing how hard like it was for me and what it did to me. Like I said earlier, it's like I felt like it broke me mentally. So for me to do that to my son seemed super selfish. So it was kind of like I made a decision that I'm done. Like I'm not gonna drink anymore. And
Yeah.
from that day, it's like I never kind of looked back on it. I think, the first month was really rocky. I did a lot of crying, a lot of emotions popped up that, maybe the alcohol helped me suppress.
Yeah, you had
But
to do that. You had to get through that. Yeah,
yeah, I felt like a lot of that, I felt like that needed to happen. And after that, like it just kind of got easier. It was weird at first going to like social events. I remember telling my fiance when she would go out, like, yeah, I'm just gonna hang back on this one. Like I didn't want to be around it and be tempted.
yeah,
Um, and she's like, I didn't understand it at the time because she's like, I didn't know how bad you were kind of battling with it. But she's like, looking back, like I understand, and they got to the point where eventually I'm like, all right, well, now I want to try to go back to these social events and see how I am. And I didn't have the urge to drink, but then for me, it was like well, I feel like I had a problem being social because I relied so much on the alcohol. When I was drunk, Steven, I talked to anybody. Oh, it was
yep,
probably obnoxious, but I was super talkative. I talked to you about anything, just compliment you on something, just so I could start talking to you.
yeah,
And when I was sober, I was not like that. I was very
no,
quiet and more to myself. So I had to learn how to like get out of my little bubble. That
yeah.
was kind of like the difficulty in the beginning too.
That's crazy. So you had your son at 34, and then you stopped drinking at 38, and it's already been over 3 years now.
Hmm.
That's crazy.
Yeah, just
But
over
yeah,
3 years.
and you thought that, obviously your dad had a lot because your dad, you said it was, he was an alcoholism, alcoholic pretty much. He drank all the
Hmm.
time. He died
Yeah,
of chronic alcoholism. And then you seen
yeah,
the same path you were drinking. At first, it just started off, hey, we're just partying. It's just lifestyle. This is what we're doing. And then you started noticing that, your son's 4 years old, starting to grow into a little human, starting to
yeah,
talk. And, so then you're like, whoa, I don't want to, you're like, you start seeing the path repeating itself. Like humans could understand patterns. You start
yeah,
seeing that, like, this is the pattern. And if I do it, then I'm gonna die. My son's he's gonna have the same life and do the same thing. So you kind of like took power in your own hands and changed
yeah,
your story, which in turn is gonna change the story of your whole lineage, kind of thing, and maybe change
yeah,
the story of your own son and his life, his future.
yeah. That's what
Sounds
I was
awesome.
hoping
Yeah, I was
for.
definitely proud
I
of you
was
for
like,
doing that. And that's when you
thank you,
started
thank
putting
you.
health over everything. And
Yeah.
now
Yeah,
you're like,
that's when too we started doing more hikes. I didn't get into the working out thing. My wrist little injury has been an excuse for a long time of why I can't work out. And you used to tell me shit all the time, like, well, why don't you fucking work out your legs or something, like do
yeah,
something. And I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna do that. And no, but we did start going on hikes. That I think that kind of started me more on a health conscious journey. And then eventually I'm like, you know what, like I'm sick and tired of not working out and using the excuse that my wrist is hurt to basically
yeah.
not do it, to do nothing.
That was
So
good, yeah. Because like
yeah,
I kind of stopped drinking before you did,
you
and
did.
I was already going on hikes. So there you are. You're stopped drinking, and then what are you gonna do? Like go hang out with the same social crowd? What are they doing? They're drinking. Or is
Yeah,
like, oh, this guy over here, one of my best friends, he's going on a hike. Let me do that just to get away and do something that's not. And so it's kind of like that was really helpful. And yeah, we
yeah,
went hiked a huge peak, and that was just kind of like kind of summed it up. Like we're at the
that
top
was
of the peak
brutal.
now. We're telling we're at the top of the peak. We did it.
Yeah.
Like we're changing our lives. Like we made that climb.
Hmm.
And every day was a climb to be sober and to live it. It's a process
Yeah.
to get to this. But you kind of quit cold turkey, and and here you are still going strong. But
Yeah. You might have
that was
had a part in that too, because I remember, when I was drinking a lot, you would tell me things, just I felt like you're almost planting little seeds, like, your son's getting older, you probably, shouldn't be drinking like you do. Like just like little comments, not
I mean,
necessarily
like you
like
want to die like
negative
your
or
dad
anything.
did and have your
Yeah, but
kid
you
have
would
no
say
dad
little,
like you do.
yeah,
I just
you
tell
would
it blunt. I'm blunt
yeah, you would
sometimes.
say things to me and I'm like, I think at the time, like they didn't like, I didn't think about them, but that's why I
Yeah,
said it's almost like you planted a seed. Maybe,
yeah,
and it took some months because I think you maybe stopped drinking maybe a year before I did. So
yeah,
maybe it took a year for those seeds to blossom, but yeah, I'm glad they did.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I'm, you're my best friend. I'm like, I don't want to see that. I knew what happened. I'm like, dude, you're out there drinking. You're super fat, and
Yeah,
it's like you're only gonna get fatter. You're only gonna get more unhealthier, and you're gonna die. Yeah, and I seen the path that you're on. That's where it was
yeah.
leading. Because yeah, you can do that when you're younger, but when you get older, it's a lot harder for your organs to handle that. They're deteriorating fast. So I'm
Oh
glad
yeah.
you did that.
The
But
hangovers in my 30s were insane. I'm like, I cannot recoup like I used to.
yeah, but then okay, so that was 38. But you kept smoking weed and you kept smoking vape, right? And
Yeah,
that was like, but you had to get through that one battle, like you're saying. It's like I was saying, it's a climb.
Hmm.
and you started the climb with alcohol, and that was your biggest demon. And then you
Hmm.
kept, working on more stuff. Like you said, we started with just hiking.
Yeah.
Then you went to the next thing, and you're like, okay, now how do I stop smoking? And then
Yeah.
then I started working out more, and then you started doing your food as well. So then it became a whole lifestyle now. And then
Yeah.
that's what ended up becoming where we're at now with health, like making this podcast and health over everything, because we know, like, how much further in life we could have been if we just stopped a lot sooner. If we, like, how
Yeah.
much money we would have if we didn't waste it all on alcohol. How much more
Yeah.
healthier we would be. And now we still
Exactly.
kind of worry about, like, oh, do we have any effects from all this damage we used to do? And now
I
look
hope
at you.
not, but you never know.
Yeah, but now look at you. Now you're a leader. You're a leader of your family.
Hmm.
Of you're not a leader of your family when you're sitting there drinking and smoking and eating bad. It's just what are you doing? You're just a bad example, pretty much.
Yeah,
And now
exactly.
you're a man. You're doing what you're a man's supposed to do.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and it was like you said, it was a process. It wasn't like, one day I woke up and boom, like I have this whole new lifestyle. It's like it took time. It took constant, falling off the horse and getting back on,
Yeah.
kind of looking at the game plan again and reanalyzing everything and switching things up. And like I failed a lot of times along the way, but
Hmm.
I decided that, I just wasn't going to quit. And well, I did quit, smoking, drinking, all that stuff, but those things were
Yeah.
difficult for me to stop. It wasn't like, I just stopped one day and was like, oh, I'm good, I'm perfect. It was like, no, it was like I would have that battle in my brain, like, no, no, no. Like you don't have to stop smoking next week. You're good, even though you're 3 days in. Like, just stop next
Yep.
week.
The
You
battle.
you could give in. So yeah, I had that up and uphill battle with that. So if you're going
Yeah.
through
So,
it, I know what it's like. It's possible to change though.
and then now finally you did stop smoking vape and weed, right? As
Yeah.
well. And like that's relatively recent because, like you're saying, it's a battle, it's a process. You have stopped throughout sometimes, like you stop and
Hmm.
you like, kind of pick it back up a little bit, and then
Yeah.
you get back on it for a month or two, and then you get back off of it. But now you're off of it totally again. Now you're doing everything great. Now
Yeah.
what's in the future for you? What's in the store for the future of your health?
Honestly, I just want to stay consistent and I feel like I have already have made it a lifestyle change. That was how I started seeing it when I started it the second time. Is I don't want it to be like, oh, get a six pack and then you're done. It was like this is something I wanted to make a lifestyle out of for a longevity, to be able to be there for my son as long as I can, and not only be there but be in a healthy physical state. So I'm not in a wheelchair watching him be a boy and enjoy his life, but I could be on the sideline or on the field with him, enjoying it with him instead of watching on the sideline. So that's a big point for me, is just to keep my vitality, to keep as healthy as I can be, to stick around here as long as I can.
Yep. And then, like, also with the people that they like drug addicts, rehabilitating drug addicts and all that stuff, they're usually taught by people that have been through it before, people that have been on drugs and then stopped.
Yeah.
What is your main purpose and reason why you are putting content out here, making a podcast, and kind of sharing your story with everybody? Like, what is your goal and like purpose with that?
Well, I feel like I hope that I could be a source of inspiration for somebody else out there who's going through a difficult time with change or with addiction or trying to, change their life in a more positive direction. Because, I feel I'm not anyone special. There's not anything special about me that makes me different from anyone else out there.
Hmm.
And if somebody could see my life and my story and kind of see what I've been through and where I'm at now and realize that, like, hey, like, even though my life right now seems like, at one point I was in a bad situation and I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel, but hopefully, I could be the source of that light, or at least like a glimpse for someone to say, like, that is possible. Like, this guy, he did it. And maybe there's a chance that I could do it too. Like,
Awesome.
let's try.
Yep.
And, that'd be awesome for me. If I could change one person's life, that would
Change
I'd be
two, it'd be
grateful
even
for that.
better. If
What was that?
you change two, that'd be even better.
Yeah, even more.
I like two better because if you just change one, it's one for one. If you change two
One
and they
for one.
change two and they change two, then it starts
Like a ripple.
yeah, it
I
starts
did the
being
one,
exponential.
this one did the two. But
Yeah.
without me, all these other people wouldn't have changed. So,
Yep. So that's pretty much your whole entire story. But like, what is there anything else of your story that you'd like to throw in there, like that we didn't talk about?
woo, I felt like we talked about a lot.
Yeah, we did.
Maybe throw in like I do feel like a reason why like in my later years that I'm so focused on like mental health is because I feel like my mom, she had issues. I don't know if it was a subconscious thing that made me naturally drawn to like my own mind and why do I think the way I think and why am I the way that I am. Maybe it was an effort for me to kind of understand my mom and why she did what she did and just try to understand myself better in the long run. Yeah, I don't know if that's why I am the way I am, but I do have a fascination with like why do we think the way that we think and like I try to get in like I feel like I've analyzed myself so much that once you start to get to know yourself so well, it's like you start to understand other people pretty well too because although we're very individual and different, I feel like at the core base there's so much similarities in, each human that we're really not that much different at
Yep.
the in the grand scheme of things.
Totally. All right. Well, that's your story. That's the story of Steven Z. A pretty good story. Pretty interesting. I know you learned a lot, and yeah, you're going to continue to keep impacting people. Like it's great to tell stories because that's what all of history we've always told stories, and that's what like made even the back in the times when it wasn't written before we even started writing, people would like tell lessons
Yeah,
through stories over
storytellers.
time.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's an awesome story, and I hope if you heard this, you got some insight on it. And yeah, if you want to reach out, follow Steven at Steven Z, which is just Steven, not well, no PH, it's not a PH one.
Yeah.
Zee. So Steven Z on Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever, TikTok.
Yep.
Yep.
If
So
I'm on all those, not really active on TikTok anymore, but I'll
and that
still
was your favorite
respond
one
if you
too.
message me there.
That used to be your favorite one.
They're gonna ban it in a few months. I'm like, why do I want to keep doing it?
Yeah.
Maybe if they don't ban it, I'll be more active on it.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
Well,
I just want to say thanks for listening. Like Aaron said, if you feel the need to drop me a message for, my opinion or some advice, I'm not a professional or anything, but I've been through certain things, and if I could, help you with getting through something, like I'd more than happy to help.
yep, he's lived life. He has a lot of experiences and a lot of experiences. A lot of people just sit around doing nothing all day. They have no experiences. So you had a lot of experiences to learn from. And that's how you learn. You learn the
Yeah.
hard way sometimes.
And most of the time, you gotta learn the hard ways,
Yep.
unfortunately.
All right. Well, that's it for me.
All right,
All right,
Steven
everybody.
Z signing out.
Peace out.